G'day guys, it's Calvin, cartoon in New Zealand. I've done a video just recently on assembling an engine, and we used the multi-layered steel head gaskets from the VVti. The engine was non-VVti, we used the VVti gaskets. And I've included a bit of information in that video, however I thought it might warrant doing a separate video on the topic. Let's do the quick version. Can you fit a VVti multi-layered steel gasket onto a non-VVti? Yes, you can. Do they handle boost? Yes, multi-layer steel, great choice. Well priced and awesome quality. For those of you that want a bit more information, let's get into it and look in more detail about the gaskets, how they work, where they go, and why you can interchange them from the VVti to the non-VVti. And it may also answer some questions on using a VVti head on a non-VVti engine. The engine for today, this is a non-VVti UCF 20 or 151, so Gen 2 engine. Crown. This is actually a Crown engine. We won't go into the differences there, but the bottom end is all the same. It's just peripherals. It had a slight incident, so that's in another video. I normally use a full gasket set, and they come with the graphite or the composite gaskets. So I did a video on the cylinder heads. Left-hand cylinder head and the right-hand cylinder head are the same cylinder head. They can be interchanged. You whip cams around and a few other bits and pieces, but they're the same cylinder head. That means that the intake manifold is reversible, and on the later VVTIs the heads aren't the same, but the intake manifolds are still reversible. But on the non-VVTi, cylinder heads are the same unit. And that means that you'd think the gaskets would be the same, however they are not. And that's to do with the water flow through the blocks. I've written right here, lots of R's, so that'll be the right hand side and the other side's left, so it'll have L's on it, okay? Left and right of engines, it's really easy. The right hand side is when you're sitting in the car. The left hand side is still when you're sitting in the car, but it's the other side to the right hand side. So it doesn't matter where in the world you are, left hand side and right hand side are the same side of the car. You do not do it from when you're standing in front of the car. That is wrong. And it helps to know left and right for when you're fitting the gaskets. It's easier with the VVTIs because I've actually got left and right. So we take the gasket, and we'll see here it lines up nicely with that big oil drain that goes back to the block. You also got oil drains right down the side, so there's 4 of them down the side of the block. There's normally a dowel, and I've taken the dowels out of this because it's going off to the machine shop very soon. Right here is the oil feed to the cylinder head. You can see the gallery coming up the block there. And you'll see quite clearly there's ways for the water to come up to the cylinder heads, but the biggest ones are at the back of the block, at the back of the gasket. Oh, that isn't one, that's a head stud. Right, so there, over here. That's because the water, and I've done a video again on the flow of water, comes through, or coolant, through the block, up to the cylinder head, and then runs forward. So it's important because if you put the incorrect gasket on, so this is the incorrect one, this is the left hand side, you'll notice it still fits on, doesn't restrict oil flow, it's all the same, but there's your water restrictors in the wrong place. And at the back, there's nowhere for the water to get up into the cylinder head. with that knowledge, you can see it's very important that the gaskets go on the correct way. And I have seen engines that have had rebuilds and have had the gaskets around the wrong way because people didn't know. So just be aware of that. And now you understand why. It's to do with that coolant flow through the engine. Now the big telltale is this piece here. That's your marker. So they should be out the back of the block. That's the right hand, which is right on the outside edge. And the left hand is more in the middle. I've got a selection of engines. We've got the 3UZ over here. Left hand, you can see it's more in the middle. And here's the right hand, poking right out the side. They are of course the steel ones. We've got Joey over here, this is a Gen 2. There's the left hand, the marker in the middle of the head. And on the right hand, it's poking out the side. And we've also got a 1UZ VVti, that'll look like just like the 3UZ. And we've got Old Yeller. Old Yellers. Certainly worse for wear on those ones, sticking out. If we do look at the left-hand gasket on the left-hand side of the engine, all that same stuff applies. You can see, there it is sticking out the side. There's the coolant flow. And there's the oil supply to the cylinder head. So now let's substitute in the steel gaskets. So these are genuine Toyota multi-layer steel gaskets from the 1UZ VVti. In an upcoming video, I will compare the 3UZ cylinder head gasket set with the 1UZ VVti gasket set. So look out for that one. I've got both the sets here ready to do it. As long as I don't sell them in between, we will be able to do that video as well. With the steel head gasket sitting on top of the composite gasket, we can see a couple of little differences, but a lot of similarities. You see the shape of the holes for the coolant flow is a little bit different. On the outside edge of the right hand, the rear tag on the back is the same, but it's got an R on it to make it a bit easier. Gone are the rubber inserts. But the big difference is right here. There's this extra hole for the oil feed which went to the VVti. There's a couple of little cosmetic changes. You can see just here the shape is a little different. But overall, that's all the critical stuff works. It's just this little bit here that is going to make a difference. So when the VVti gasket's fitted to a non-VVti block, this is just going to hang out in the breeze. It's just going to be left over and not used. On the left-hand side, the rear tag, it's got an L on it, and it's a little bit bigger. You can see here it says, instead of poking at the back here, it goes to the side, sort of, still at the back. Again, just cosmetically a little bit of different in the shape along the side there in this department. But that big difference is right there with that oil feed that doesn't exist, which would normally be for the VVti. A quick note on the head studs, and guys will say you must always replace them. It's not actually the truth. Toyota do have a spec on measuring the stretch, and there's a certain point at a certain place in the length that you measure them to see if they're within spec. The safest way though is to simply throw them away and put new ones on it, and that is pretty much commonplace, and that's where that's come from. It's much better too, and it's highly recommended too, but it's not a must do every time. These have a bolt. I don't have a set of bolts with me. If you're running ARP hardware, you guys do struggle to find listings. How about I go get a set of head studs that are suitable for a 1UZ from ARP. Wait, right there. That is a standard UZ head bolt. This is a box of 2ZZ Toyota 1.8 Corolla head studs. There is the part number. This is just one of the part numbers you can use for the UZs. Okay, and there's different grades and different sets, but this is the basic dimensions that you're looking for. It's quite a big box for 10 studs, and you're going to need 2 sets of them. There's the nuts, there's new washers, and there's 10 studs in the pack. If you're looking there, there's only 8 because there's 2 of them in the engine that's over there. So we look at the length. So this is about where the nut's going to sit. There's going to be some bolt above the nut. We'll discuss that in a moment. So that is the part number for the ARPs. And actually, while we're here, LS1 rod bolts work for 1UZs as well. So that's the ARP rod bolt that I use. So did you guys see that? How many of you guys think I was just being an absolute cock? And I'll show you the cock that walked past the workshop this morning. It was pretty cool. And so you thought I was just being a bit of a pain and not actually showing the numbers when I said I was going to show the part numbers. Well, somewhere the 1UZ gods said no. And they sunstriked right onto those part numbers like you wouldn't believe. Like, I'm not that clever with editing. I'm not that good with special effects. But somebody doesn't want us to share those part numbers. And did you like my little cockbird pheasant? Isn't he a pretty boy? He was chasing his little hen. So anyway, let's sneak away. I'm away from the workshop. We might have to be a little bit stealthy, and let's get those part numbers for you so I can actually share the part numbers of the studs that I use. Can you see it, guys? So there's no chance of sunstrike. We'll go up here. Those are the flywheel bolts. There's the head studs. No one's getting in our way this time. Let's check out that number. Can we see it? Oh, man. There it is. That is the head stud number that I use for the 1UZs. 203-5407 for a 2ZZ Toyota Corolla. And you buy 2 sets of them. Pretty sure no one's listening. And I don't have to get my tinfoil hat on. Excellent. And we had some rod bolts. Give me a moment. Small block sheave. Rod bolts. 134606. There, I've done it. I have officially shared the proper bolt numbers. Now there are guys out there and companies that are selling these, and I understand why they don't want to share the part numbers, okay? This is just one of the part numbers that can be used for UZs. And at the end of the day, these guys have done the research, they found what works. Some of them are already prepping the couple of the bolts, or I've got to call them studs, a couple of the studs to overcome the next problem, which is the scissor gears. And they fail with those particular bolts. So if you come across some of these companies that are buying and providing this stuff to people, just buy them from them. You're not going to save a whole lot of money buying them elsewhere, because they all kind of cost the same amount. Those guys get a discount from ARP if they buy lots of them, and everyone wins when we work like that. So in here, I've got a couple of studs moved in. That's the two that were missing out of the packet. And you can see this is the amount of thread that's sitting above the cylinder head. That's the extra. And that will cause a problem by the scissor gears. So they do need to be machined and sorted to overcome that. So there you have it, the proper ARP part numbers that I use for the head studs. Not the only ones you can use. There are different grades and there's different numbers that you can use. So different people have used different bolts and they work fine, of course, long as they've got the right thread into the block. Now, just very quickly, and I'm going to do a proper video at some stage discussing the clearance of the ARP head studs to the scissor gears. So the two in the middle there, where they do foul, you've got a couple of options. You get your drill, and you can actually take about 6 millimeters out of the top threads. Get your measuring in, get your verniers in there, measure to the bottom of the hole, and you'll find that there's plenty of thread into that block. So you rip out about 6 millimeters of threads and allows the bolt to sink further into the block. Just fine, no issues there. Of course, the other way is you take an angle grinder and you whip the top off the stud. Some guys also suggest machining the cylinder head surface where the washer goes, taking several millimeters out of that to drop it all down and then taking the top off the stud. All are just fine. I will do a better video next year sometime of that process, but that gives you an idea that you do need to do some clearancing on those head studs. So I hope that helps out on ARP head studs. If not using them, and I've got plenty of engines that are turbocharged or lots of power running on standard bolts. They work just fine when used properly and installed correctly. And the same with these gaskets. If you're fitting up the steel head gaskets, make sure surfaces are clean, make sure they're fitted up properly in the correct orientation, and torque to the correct settings. Now, quickly chatting about different heads on different blocks. I think it's kind of a silly idea these days. If you want to swap them around, just buy the correct block with the correct head combo. You're away, done. But if you are putting let's say a non-VVti head onto a VVti block, there's that oil port that is going to need to be blocked up. If going the other way, putting a non-VVti, if going the other way and you're putting a VVti head on a non-VVti block, it's okay if you're not wanting to use the VVti and that's getting deleted, but most guys want to use it. It's a pain in the ass to do, and realistically these days I don't think it's worth it. Can be done, you can feed external oil feeds if you want. I've seen it done. It's probably not a practical option in these days. Just buy the VVti engine and start with that. I hope that's been helpful. Hopefully we can engage in some intelligent discussions on this topic. We'll talk to you again soon. Catch you later. Hey little calves, how you getting on? So these are some of our little feeder calves. They're a bit of a mixed bunch, this lot. They're looking pretty healthy and shiny. pretty content. And then when they grow up, they look like those ones. So those guys are a bit over a year old now. And they'll be with us for another year. They're looking great too. Check out my view. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Just an absolutely lovely spot.